Hey there, good evening, good evening, good evening. Thank you for joining us on the Political Deep Dive. I am your host, Dave Valente. Thank you for joining us this week. Before we get into our topic this evening, which is the failure of foreign policy in Afghanistan, wanted to do a couple of ads. This is the last week, so next Friday night and Saturday night, many of the LP leadership will be in Denver, Colorado, attending the 50th anniversary. If you want to attend, there's still slots to join us in Denver. It is 50.lp.org. It'll be a great time. No meetings, we're, of course, when you get libertarians together, we're going to talk politics and all that good stuff. But, none of the trappings of LP business or anything like that going on. It's just a chance for us to get together, celebrate our 50 years, talk about our next 50 years, and, have a great time. So I look forward to seeing as many of you in Denver, Colorado as possible. And if you're going to Denver, come out, seek me out, say hi. I'd love to meet you. But yeah, 50.lp.org or lp.org/50 will get you there. So also, regional training was still going on. They're taking a little bit of a break, but in September they're going to be kicking it back off. They've got trainings in Indianapolis, Des Moines, Iowa, Shreveport, and Atlantic City. Yes. So let me get the link for that as well here. There we go. Regional affiliate training and campaign training initiative. You learn how, I took the track for leadership for affiliates. And, I'm thinking about going to Atlantic City to take the campaign training. I know a couple members of the LNC have done both, Tim Hagan and I believe TJ Ferreira. And, I'd love to get trained up in both, but you become a certified, trained, either an affiliate leader or a campaign leader. You learn how to do valuable things like being a campaign treasurer or affiliate treasurer, how to do social media, just very great professionalizing the affiliates of the LP or the campaigns of the LP. So I encourage everyone to get out there and check out those trainings. Well worth, and the great thing is it's well worth the money because it's free. All you need to do is pay for the cost of the hotel room in the city that you're going to. But the training itself is free. Kara Schultz, Paula Bazell, Tara DeSisto, Michelle McCutcheon, and a host of other trainers are fantastic. And I can't speak highly enough of the experience. While I was in our training, I was in Norfolk, Virginia. Spike Cohen came out there and he did an event for a group called the Concerned Veterans of America. I'm repping their shirt tonight. It was a great event, and their goal is to bring home all of our service members that are overseas and return some common sense to our foreign policy. So another great group, and thanks to Spike for bringing attention to that group. Tonight, we're going to be talking about Afghanistan. And I say the failure of Afghanistan was the title of this. I do want to make this 100% clear. I don't lay the blame of what happened in Afghanistan on the feet of our service members. They were sent into an impossible situation with political leadership that was inept at best. Watching what's going on in Afghanistan has been particularly hard. I know I work with a lot of veterans, and I see the pain that is going on with them as they watch. Many of them Afghanistan vets themselves, watching what they've done, the friends that they lost, the blood and treasure that we spilled over there, being poured down the drain. So, but tonight is really to talk about why Afghanistan was such a failure. And my guest tonight is Craig Bowden. I'm sorry, Bowden. Craig Bowden. I bring you on there. Hey, Craig, how you doing, man?
Doing well, thank you.
Good. So, a little background on Afghanistan. On September 19th, it'll mark 20 years since we assisted the Northern Alliance in overthrowing the Taliban, or beginning the effort of overthrowing the Taliban over the period of August or October, November of 2001. And the Taliban, if people don't know the history, the Taliban is a group. Taliban means the students or the seekers in Pashtun, and it grew out of the Mujahideen movement of the 80s that fought and overthrew the Soviets out of Afghanistan in 1989. They enforce a strict version of Sharia, which is basically just Islamic jurisprudence or Islamic law. Um, they held sway over a majority of Afghanistan from 1996 until 2001, when they were overthrown by Northern Alliance fighters and U.S. Special Forces, and that began America's longest, slowest, deadly dance with Afghanistan, the graveyard of empires. So that's just a little bit of background on what happened with Afghanistan to lead us into this conversation. But Craig, you're a 7.5 year veteran of the United States Marine Corps. You were twice a congressional candidate for Utah's first district and a Senate candidate in 2018. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Unfortunately, the 7.5 years that you mentioned with my Marine Corps tenure ended up stemming from getting injured. Normally, they're 4-year contracts, but busting my knee in a training accident kind of ended that. Once I got done with the Marine Corps, I kind of bounced around jobs a little bit. Kind of typical for a lot of veterans trying to readjust into society, and eventually ended up becoming my own business owner. That's kind of the career path that I've taken. I have 6 kids, been married with the same woman for almost 10 years now, and just enjoy life. I grow vegetables, and I also am pretty heavily involved in politics. As you mentioned, I ran for federal office 3 times. I've been on some local school boards, constantly speaking out at city council meetings, just kind of your run-of-the-mill activism. Mm-hmm. And now I'm ready to take the fight on behalf of all of the veterans, the interpreters, everything like that, and start attacking and get some accountability in Afghanistan on what happened.
Absolutely. That was a good point that I believe, yes, definitely not Stephen Ellis. Don't believe it's Stephen Ellis at all. But he said 6 months before the Soviets invaded, Carter gave them $500 million arms and training. I know Reagan also funneled a lot of money to the Mujahideen. CIA assisted the ISI in Pakistan on training the Mujahideen as well, of which our friend Osama bin Laden was a member of that group, and that's why Osama bin Laden ended up back in Afghanistan after being chased out of Saudi Arabia and out of Sudan as well. So, but yeah, good point. But anyway, so what got you involved in the Libertarian Party? I'd like to ask my guests their origin story with the LPs.
Sure. So we have to go back to my second deployment to Iraq. That was kind of the door opening for me. Essentially, it was a monsoon season, so it was cold, wet, rainy, middle of the night on my very first wedding anniversary, and took a little bit of fire, nothing serious. But there I was risking my life, and we all remember the ramp ups for weapons of mass destruction, and this was now me being there on my second deployment. It's now a few years later, and the only thing that we'd been able to find were corroded weapons that had been supplied by the U.S. government during the Iran-Iraq war. Basically useless, and just totally corroded and nasty. And so that kind of got me questioning. I mean, clearly when government can mess up something that big, that wrong, we have a major issue. And what else are they getting wrong? And so I just started looking into, as much literature as I could get my hands on. I started researching other parties because, I mean, there's only been 2 that have been running the show for the last 150 plus years. Mm-hmm. So, obviously these there's got to be some problems with them. Eventually ended up meeting up at Utah Libertarian event when I was exploring parties, and a gentleman by the name of David, he took me in like a brother right away. Just, hey, I was right where you were a few years ago. Let's talk, and we discussed what it was. And he's like, well, sounds to me like you're a libertarian. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of what you guys are saying. And so that's how I got involved.
Awesome, awesome. So, as a candidate, you ran on a plank of non-interventionism, and a lot of times non-interventionism gets sold to the public as isolationism. What's the fundamental difference between non-interventionism and isolationism?
So with non-intervention, basically what we're looking at is we're not going to use military or force to try to get you to comply our way. And on top of that, we're withdrawing from the world in, a more isolationist policy. So we're not doing free trade. We're not going through and, maybe some humanitarian type stuff, or doing doctors' work exchanges, things like that, that help better the world. So when we're in non-intervention, we're not using our military. We're not trying to use economic sanctions. We're trying the more peaceful, let's be a friend approach. Let's help lift everyone up. Let's all be prosperous. Let's all be successful. Whereas isolation, it's the selfish, we're going to only take care of us and screw everybody else, and we're not going to trade. And that causes, higher prices, because it's all localized. You can't get cheaper goods anywhere else, so on and so forth.
Yeah, yeah. That's my read on it. Basically, isolationism basically means we just retreat from the world and let them, as a country, we keep our people in. We don't let them go overseas. Non-interventionism is that the government is not making the decisions, not not doing sanctions, which I've argued on this show many times about the stupidity of U.S. sanctions on a government. It was something that we did on Afghanistan. It's not something we do in Iran, with Venezuela, Cuba, and I think prolongs conflict rather than actually brings about the changes that you wish to see. So, absolutely. So my feeling on Afghanistan is that this would have happened. What we're seeing right now would have happened if we had gotten out right after the Northern Alliance had overthrown the Taliban. This would have happened if we had stayed in and left the moment we got rid of Osama bin Laden in Pakistan. And this would have happened, it happened 2 weeks ago. It would have happened 20 years from now if we had stayed in there. What is your sense of kind of how this ended up?
A lot of it has to do with, in my opinion, a lot of officers and politicians wanting to keep their jobs. And so they manipulate data. They sometimes may even outright lie. But essentially, they're trying to make themselves look like there's progress going on so that they can save their political rear ends, and they can, save their military careers. I mean, when you get some of those top brass guys, they want to get to the highest positions possible, get as many medals as they can for doing a good job. That way they're more competitive for higher commands. So I think that's one big element.
It's not even saving oneself. It's actually getting benefits off of a lie. When you think about it, the guy that gets promoted to brigadier general, or an officer gets promoted based off of faulty information. That's profiting off of a lie. And politicians raking in all kinds of campaign donations and all that stuff, talking about how well everything's going in Afghanistan. It's awful. So as a veteran, how do you view what's going on in Afghanistan today?
It definitely hurts. I mean, I didn't serve there personally myself, but I did go through this process when ISIS started, being pretty active in Iraq and, toppling cities that I had fought in. So this kind of stuff is really heartbreaking. We sit there and we've got this question. I personally know 23 Marines that never came home from either Iraq or Afghanistan that I either trained, I was on a fire team with, whatever have you. And, we sit there and it's like, why were their lives wasted? Why did we have to be there? We know that, you just look through history, Vietnam, Iraq, obviously a very recent one. All the withdrawals that we've had kind of end up this way. And veterans are left with the question of what good did we do? What was all that sacrifice for? What did I lose my leg for? What did I, that they sit there and it hurts so badly and it's hard to wrap your head around. We're talking about 20 years. My oldest child was born almost 16 years ago, and she has known absolutely nothing but us being at war. And there's guys that are a little bit older than me that literally had kids that were enlisting into the military and following in their parents' footsteps and going into the same cities that they patrolled in Afghanistan.
Sure.
It's painful. What was it for?
Yeah, I mean, and it's not just Afghanistan. I mean, you pointed out Vietnam was the same way. I mean, almost to the pictures that we saw of the withdrawal. You can make the argument. Well, is Libya any better than it was? I mean, yeah, you can say Colonel Gaddafi was a murderous thug and awful.
Mm-hmm.
But is Libya in a better place now than it was?
No, definitely not. I mean, they've got open slave markets now.
Yeah. Is Iraq, I mean, yeah, you can make the argument that Saddam Hussein was a brutal butcher, and the world is better for him not being in it. But is Iraq really in a better place than it was? Our foreign interventionism has really cost a lot of lives and a lot of, not just on the American side, but on the local side. Look at Somalia. Somalia is still a failed state, and we're 30 years on from that. And people say that Afghanistan was the start of the war. To the federal government, the war started August 2nd of 1990, and it continues to this day. They pay benefits based on this period of war that started August 2nd of 1990. Yep. Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, and we started sending people over to Saudi Arabia. That's the start date of this war, and it still continues. It's amazing to me. So, today the administration is conscripting U.S. airlines to assist in the evacuation. Hey, Kitty. Mm-hmm. I mean, this withdrawal is probably one of the most bungled I've ever seen. It begs the question, especially about U.S. military equipment, that you see these massive C-130s that are sitting on the tarmac there, and they can fit. I mean, that plane, the one that the infamous plane that flew and those two people fell off of, had
I think it was a C-17
or C-17 had upwards of like 800 people on that thing,
mm-hmm.
just jam packed into it. They're not guaranteeing the safety of the people trying to get to the airport, which I understand. I mean, it's hard. Right now we're in a very weird situation where the Taliban control the ground and we just control the airport. Now we could control the ground very easily if you wanted to. I just don't think that there's the political will for us to do it. But how many lives you want to cost? But this withdrawal has just been painfully dumb to watch. And it's not like they haven't had a warning that they were going to be leaving. Like they, the way that they did it was just kind of bass backwards. They pulled all the troops out in the middle of the night, and then they were surprised that the Taliban just rolled through. Like, oops.
Yeah, definitely get it. Put me with a star up on my shoulder. And I mean, yes, I would have still, obviously followed orders to withdraw, but I'm going to get the civilians out first. I mean, the intelligence on the ground was as soon as we were out of there, the Taliban was basically going to take over.
Yeah.
Stats that I've read, they controlled 30 to 40% of the country the entire time we occupied. It wasn't in an official capacity. You know, we obviously supported, you know, the people that we trained and, you know,
Mhm.
everything like that. But as soon as we stopped patrolling the town, Taliban were moving back in. This has been said by countless guys that I used to serve with. And that, I mean, literally, they'd go, they'd clear the town, rout out the Taliban, they'd retreat up into the hills or, you know, fall back, whatever. And they'd think that they would have it secured and then they'd move back in. It was the same in Iraq. Every time we, you know, took out one thing, they just fall back into another and take a different piece. It's that's just the way that guerrilla warfare works. They're not going to just sit there in a formation and let you come at them. They're going
No.
to hide. They're going to be in the people. They're going to, you know, continue their manipulation. I mean, the poppy crops was one of their ways that they made money to fund their efforts,
Sure.
and so they still got to extort the farmers to get some of that money.
Yep.
That's just the way that it's got to go in order for them to continue their campaigns and everything. So, I mean, obviously, it was still going on.
Mhm. Yeah. And so does this feel like it's been a long, just basically grift from American taxpayers to defense contractors?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's just been gross negligence. If I'm not mistaken, they estimate that 40% of the money that went into reconstruction ended up basically going into the corrupt pockets of politicians and contractors skimming off the top. That's what's estimated by the Special Inspector General for Afghanistan, the office that was created specifically to oversee construction. They're literally saying that 40% of the $1 trillion that we spent there disappeared. That's not an insignificant sum. So they literally not only sent young men and women over to die, but they ripped off the taxpayers hardcore and were just basically pouring money out into it. And there's 40% that they don't even know what the heck happened to, and it's corruption.
Yeah. I was seeing, I didn't, haven't seen a verification of it. I know that we spent in Iraq and Afghanistan over $2 trillion.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah, upwards of 1/6 of every dollar that we've ever printed went to these wars. You know, and people ask, well, how does that work? And it's like, well, you give money to a defense contractor, and they deliver some things. I mean, we got 60% off that money, but they continue to they'll skim some off the top and continue to pay politicians. Give campaign contributions to politicians, and the politicians continue to cut money in the budget to these
Mm-hmm.
defense contractors. Whenever you see a politician talking about how our defenses have been weakened in the United States, this is exactly what's happening. This is
Yep.
exactly what they want you to. Oh yeah, we need more money into defense. That's just it continues the circular flow of
Mm-hmm.
that dollar going from Afghanistan back to the campaign pockets of a politician, and then
Yep.
back out the budget.
And that's basically the grift that politicians in the military industrial complex have with each other. And I mean, just look at the fact that there's not a single branch that has passed an audit in decades. And then look at some of those reports, the crazy, kind of headline grabbers and memes that we've seen out there, where they're talking about literally, uh, spending $1,200 on a freaking coffee mug.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it's not costing them $1,200 for a coffee mug. It's not costing them $500 for a toilet seat. I
Yeah,
mean, I could do it for cheaper. You give me 50 grand, and I'll get you all the toilet seats you need from the Home Depot.
I'll buy you some styrofoam coffee mugs. Well, that might not
Exactly.
be politically correct, but I'll get you some cheap coffee. Yeah, that's the crazy thing. And can you tell me how many defense contractors and politicians have gone to jail over this?
Last I checked, pretty much zero. They kind of like to cover for each other.
Oh yeah.
It's one of those, we investigated ourselves and we found nothing wrong.
Yeah, exactly. So, one of the things you're doing is trying to bring some accountability to the war in Afghanistan. Tell us a little bit about your organization that you're starting.
So yeah, I'm in the process of getting a political action committee started. It's called the Afghan Accountability Pack, or Afghanistan Accountability Pack. And essentially what we're trying to do is, one, we're going to be going after people that would be on, like, say, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, because obviously they would have known what the situation on the ground was. The Armed Services Committee, because obviously they're going to know what's going on the ground. And then, when you see some of these politicians out on Twitter, out on the news cycle, social media, everything like that, they're just so outraged, so outraged. How could Joe Biden do this? And while Joe Biden does have his share of the blame, I mean, he's the one that did approve the withdrawal. He's the one that did approve the plans. And I mean, frankly, he's been in government for 50 years, so he's been involved in some way through all of it. So he obviously knows some of that, and he made some bad calls, needs to be held accountable. But all of these people feigning outrage, they also had the information. I mean, there was where I was drawing my data from, that I talked about a little bit earlier, was out of the Afghanistan papers that were basically discovered by the Washington Post. And that's where they found out that basically money was just getting lost everywhere. The programs that they were establishing weren't being actually established. Just all this stuff. And so that came out in 2019. That was public. Everybody knew. The Washington Post had gotten it out there. And yet they're sitting there and saying, how could you do this? Well, where were you on your committees where you could have actually checked in with the military commanders and said, hey, we want to see the plan too? Or, what's the withdrawal process going to look like? Where were the hearings on this kind of stuff? Or even just talking to them, scheduling a meeting with them. I mean, and at least congressional leadership, the Senate Majority Leader, the Senate Minority Leader, the Speaker of the House, everybody like that. They could have been in with the presidential briefings for that kind of stuff and been aware of what's going on, brief their membership, et cetera, so on. And they weren't doing that. And now everybody is sitting there and crying. So we're also going to be targeting some of those that we could definitely confirm. I'm not as concerned with those who maybe only got elected in, like, say, 2020, because they haven't had as much experience. But anybody that's been in there for at least 2-3 terms, and with these papers coming out publicly, I mean, you knew the information and you were not taking steps to end the war. You were not taking steps to make sure that the withdrawal was actually good to go. I mean, you guys had all that information and you did nothing and waited for a political opportunity to use it against your opponents. It's ridiculous. And so we're going to be targeting those offices. We're going to select candidates based on a couple different criteria. We're going to grab them up and we're going to endorse. We're going to fund their campaigns. We're going to run some ads in those states that we're targeting. And we're basically just asking for accountability in Afghanistan. We want to see hearings with teeth, actual punishment. So the generals that were lying, they need to maybe be kicked out of the military, court-martialed. Who knows?
Reduction in rank.
It depends on how big it is. But there's got to be accountability on it. We can't just keep letting this stuff happen over and over again, where we're going into a country, leaving billions of dollars of military equipment to our, so-called enemies that we've been fighting for years, and frankly, abandoning some of our American citizens that are sitting there stranded, as well as the Afghani allies that helped us out. And by the way, we're also not going to tell our allies in NATO that we're leaving. We're just going to up and leave in the middle of the night, and nobody's going to know. That
was one of the scandalous stories like that. I mean, Bagram Air Base. They're one day they're gone. They don't even tell the Afghans that hey, this is your base now. Here are the keys. It was just they showed up to work the next day and no one's there, and that's insane. I always criticize the British for how they, managed withdrawals from their colonial powers. In much the same way, Israel is one of the examples. All throughout Africa, it was, you know, they'd set a date, and then like a few months before, they just skedaddle in the middle of the night and
Hmm.
you know leave the warring tribes to fight one another. I mean, that's basically that's their MO, and we did it. We did it in this case, and that's just, I mean, it's obscene what they did. And you're right, Congress has really abdicated its complete responsibility,
Hmm.
not just for declaring war. Yeah, we did pass the AUMF in 2001 for this, but how about a review of it every once in a while? How about
Yeah.
let's take a look at what's going on. I mean, there was plenty of evidence. If you believing the Afghanistan papers, plenty of evidence that things are going askew here, and we're not going to get any return out of this. It could
Hmm.
have been ended years ago.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 18 years ago, it
yeah,
should have been done. I mean, if our mission, as President Bush declared, was basically to disrupt Al Qaeda and then go after some of that top leadership, we did that. As soon as that was done, that's when it should have ended. Instead, we entered into nation building. And the culture, when you're talking about the Middle East, is very, very different from Western culture. So you have a lot of tribal loyalty, and so it's never going to work. They don't have that same kind of national identity. I mean, it's split by religious sects. It's split up by families, by
yeah,
tribes. Some of them have monarchy style tribes. Others are democratic tribes, and they select their elders. So, I mean, there's just so many differences, and whoever they identify as, that's typically who they're going to be around, and they don't give, you know, two wits about, whatever else is going on.
sure.
And we never could hold it, and that's why
Yeah,
nobody else really could hold it.
and it is kind of the legacy of the British holding that area for a time, is that one of their big things was just piling together a bunch of different disparate peoples into a national organization, and then keeping them fighting each other so they wouldn't have to fight the people. They just basically what the United States
Hmm.
government is doing right now. They keep us fighting each other, and they don't have to fight us. Um, but you got Hazaris and Pashtuns and Urdus, and
Hmm.
all people are just smashed together into these imaginary borders that were drawn by the British, drawn by the French, especially in the Middle East.
Oh yeah.
These people would live together if they had their own tribal areas, but since they're put together in a place that has a singular power structure, they're going to fight each other, and that's
Hmm.
what's going on in Afghanistan. Is that the Pashtuns are the strongest tribe there, and they're gonna try and assert their dominance.
Well, and it's the same in Iraq. You have the Sunni, you've got the Shia, you've got the Kurds.
Hmm.
You end up with all that kind of stuff and all these setups that have happened in years past, and we're not learning from those mistakes.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, any other policy goals of your organization? Uh, you know,
Um, you did mention the authorization of use for military force. That is one of the things that we are going to be seeking to get repealed, in both getting candidate commitments, as well as having a lobbying arm that will go and try to get legislation to get those totally repealed. I mean, when you listen to President Biden when he was giving his speech a few days ago, his first one, since everything was getting steamrolled, uh, he was talking about, we need to withdraw from Afghanistan, all that kind of stuff, and that's great. But then he brings up that there's, all these other places that we need to be ready to go. He's talking about, Al Qaeda cells everywhere else, and it, so in reality, what we end up having is the whole war on terror, that was authorized with the authorization for use of military force, is they're abusing that and going into other countries using the Al Qaeda excuse. And so by repealing that, they would actually have to get a congressional authorization for every single country separately. And that way we can actually, see, well, do we really need to be in this place? And it stalls getting troops out there. It keeps fewer boots on the ground. We need to be not involved in, trying to settle all these disputes. One of the things that I saw flash across from one of the commenters was talking about blowback. And I'm telling you right now, okay, if I were an Afghani, a Yemeni, an Iraqi, a Syrian, and I was going about my day, and have one of my kids with me, and a drone comes flying over, rocket launches, and kills my kid, guess what? You just created me as a terrorist. That's the way that it would go. Because I know, that the pain of losing people, family members, but everything that we mostly experience in our life is the natural causes. They were old, they, had cancer, we expected it. But when you're just trying to go about the marketplace, or you're at a wedding and suddenly your family members are dead, you're gonna get blowback. And I have a firsthand experience of an immediate blowback. This wasn't a buildup. I mean, people can get mad quite instantly. We were out in Iraq, and we were in what they called a red zone, a place where no U.S. forces had really been. And well, the people, they were mostly indifferent towards our presence. I mean, it was a military area, so they were used to Iraqi soldiers all the time. So our presence didn't bother them much. Wary, but not violent. Well, one day there was a convoy that was rolling through one of the main supply routes, and a pop shot goes off, and this convoy just unloads everything they have in the direction of where they think it came from, not getting positive ID or anything like that. And unfortunately, a 16-year-old girl in the town was killed in that fire. After that, we started getting mortared at our forward operating bases. Al Assad Air Base was getting rocketed and mortared. Firefights were happening. They were mining roads, and just all this stuff. It went from where there was not really much more than a wary stare to active hostility, just like that. And that was just one town. So when we order those airstrikes, when we're not getting the positive identification, I mean, if you look up Afghanistan or President Obama and 90% on Google, you're going to get a really horrible article that basically said that 90% of drone strikes did not even get the intended target. And that was, during the surge, that, when we've got even more boots on the ground, which means there's more conflicts going on the ground as well. So we've increased the airstrikes, we've increased collateral on the ground. You have innocents getting killed all the time, and all you're doing is ticking off the people that live there. They may not have cared that you were there. They may have even been willing to help you, but then their cousin got blown up, their dad, their mom, their daughter, their son, brother, whatever. And now Taliban or Al Qaeda or somebody like that comes in, and they're like, hey, this is the great Satan, and now you see why. Join us. We'll take care of you. We will get vengeance for you. And so you just made the best recruiting ad that you could for these kinds of elements. And so literally for every one that we may end up getting, we end up with 5, 10, 15 more.
Yeah. The drone warfare program has just been a complete disaster. And apparently a bunch of them fell into the hands of the Taliban since we, hightailed it out of there. And,
Yep.
they'll probably be able to use them to terrorize people on the ground and keep them in tow. So, this is, blowback has been, it's basically the central tenet of American foreign policy for the last 75 years, ever since, really since Korea. And down through that into Vietnam, and especially what we've done in the Middle East has been just grossly negligent. When you talk about what's going on in Yemen right now, when you're talking about what's going on in Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria and
Half of Africa.
yeah, and the these are things we're not even hearing about, the stuff that's going on in Africa. This is way under the radar, but we're there and we're involved in, whether it's Boko Haram or whether it's what's going on in Niger or Burkina Faso or these are the Horn of Africa, which continues to be a destabilized region because of all the stuff that we did there in '92.
Operation Hope.
Oh, I'd like to find the people that name these things. The enduring freedom. It's just like, no, really. Yeah, it's not good. American foreign policy has been too much stick, not enough carrot. And
Mm-hmm.
if we could get to all carrots, that'd be great.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, you're always going to have somebody that's. My dad used to give me an analogy. If you had two people on the earth, you're going to end up having them fight over something, even if it was only two of them. So yeah, it's possible we could still end up with people that hate our guts, and they may even want to go to war. And so, but by not engaging in that manner, the rest of the world is going to be sitting there like, dude, what's your problem? They're going to get pressured once everybody else is like, if you're going to go after them just for existing, then we're pulling all of our trade.
Yeah.
You start getting that more free association, more of kind of a, I mean, I guess government still exists in this scenario. So it's not quite free market, but a little bit more free market principle where they're, hey, if you guys back off, we're going to flood you with McDonald's, or we're going to get some doctors program training over there for you. We've got a bunch of people that want to come and help, figure out your infrastructure with you. That's the kind of stuff that's going to start happening.
How about we get you farm machinery to become more self-sufficient?
Exactly.
Our John Deere would love to have access to a market in Afghanistan or Yemen.
Mm-hmm.
This is not all desert when you think about these countries. They're not all desert.
Absolutely.
They have
Absolutely.
arable farmland that our companies could certainly help. And that by continuing to do things like sanctions and keeping medicine from children in Afghanistan or Iraq or Cuba or Venezuela, all you're doing is again, this is blowback. All you're doing is creating enemies, and you're giving the governments that we're trying to affect a reason to not to do that. They've got the reason to sell to their people that keeps the people off their back. Like, it's not us, it's the Americans. They're the reasons why you can't get medicine. They're the reasons why you don't have a doctor in your village. We're the great Satan. So these are the people that we need to attack, and this is the next generation of our problems going down the road.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you bring up a really great point when you talk about the fact that it's the people in those countries that are suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And I've traveled to a couple places around the world. I've been to some Arab countries, I've been to some Europe countries, and people generally are just people. Okay, when I was in Iraq, I mean, they were just going to work, opening up their restaurant in the morning, or they were heading in to go be a teacher at a college, or they're a nurse on the way to the hospital. They have families. They have jobs. They're just trying to make ends meet, just like every single one of us.
Yeah.
And, for most of the people, for most of our occupational stuff, it was more of an annoyance, the checkpoints that we had to run and things like that. But when you end up affecting their family, they're mad. They're angry. And I don't blame them one bit. I mean, I wouldn't say that I necessarily regret my service, but there are some things that I would definitely change. There's so many things that when I look at it, I realized I was the occupier. I was the one that wasn't the welcome person. when you start seeing, and I mean, there's even times where some of these poor farmers, their choice is my family starves, or I can go plant this IED and they'll give me $500 so I can feed my family for another couple months. You know, that we basically created a situation where they were starving, they were having a hard time, and that's another recruiting technique is, look, we can help you. You know, the Taliban, Al Qaeda, the Mujahideen, whatever you want to call them, whatever group it is, Boko Haram, they're coming in and they're like, look, the reason why everything is gone is because they collapsed the government when they invaded. All those things that you had before are now gone, and we want you to help us fight. Or, you know, hey, we'll give you $500 so your family can eat for a few months if you just go and dig this hole and put this metal tube in.
Yep.
And I don't
So
blame them.
no, I don't blame them either. And it's, I mean, when you think about it, there are quite some parallels when you think about, you know, the way government treats us, in that, you know, it it'll, you know, break your leg and then hand you a crutch and say, well, without us, you wouldn't be walking. You know, it's like it does that, you know, to a much less deadlier degree than you know, overseas, but certainly there are some parallels to be drawn. You know, government's force, and that's the name of the game with them, and it's very sad. So, tell me a little. Do you have anything right now? I know you're very much in the very early stages of forming your pack. Do you have any website, or how would people want to get a hold of you to start talking about this? And what do you need
Yeah.
for you?
Um, so right now I'm still waiting on bank approval paperwork. That's really key because I want everything to be 100% above board. That's one thing that I truly believe in is transparency, accountability. I mean, that's why I started this pack. So we have to wait on our bank approvals. We're waiting on our payment processor approval since we are filed as a nonprofit. And then as soon as that's all done, we're launching the website and it's going to be ready to go. For right now, we do have our Facebook page. You can look it up under Afghanistan Accountability Pack, or you could actually tag it. I believe it's at Afghan Accountability Pack. And if you go and follow, you're going to get all the updates as they're coming in when we get the website going, when we get some dedicated phone numbers, once we actually start being able to collect money so that we can start finding those candidates, start paying some people some research, you know, to help us find out who knew what when, so that we can run those ads, so that we can challenge those congressional districts and those senators up for reelection. And hopefully get some people in there that are actually going to repeal the AUMF, that are going to start some investigations with consequences. And I can't stress that enough, that there has to be teeth to the investigation, which
Yes.
is why we want these incumbents the heck out, because most of them are only using these as a political ploy. They're trying to manipulate. And so we want people that are going to go in there, find those generals, find the people that were in the Department of State that were lying, and start impeaching, pushing for, you know, rank removal, whatever's got to be done, so that we can actually get people to be aware that from now on, the American people are not going to take you wasting our money, wasting our young men and women, and there's going to be consequences. You're going to lose office. You're going to get investigated. You're going to be impeached. We're going to get to the bottom of this. And that's why we need people to challenge, you know, these Democrats and Republicans that have been entrenched for 150 years. It's got to get.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I know another big thing with you, and this is not really, it is related to Afghanistan and everything, but you're, as a veteran, you're also in the VA system. So, well, what are your thoughts and feelings about the VA system?
Uh, we need a whole show to get all of it out, but um, I look at it this way. I took 3 years or so to get my first denial when I was trying to get some help. I've got nerve damage. I've got damage to my knee, traumatic brain injury, post-traumatic stress disorder. I have a compressed spine, shattered tailbone, all this stuff from the past. And it took them 3 years to deny my claim. So come to find out, they actually had lost my medical records. So I literally had to go and contact former corpsmen, former medical officers, squad leaders that could give witness statements, platoon commanders, et cetera, so on, and scrounge up every piece of paper that I had that confirmed this stuff to basically get help with the things that I needed help with. From there, it took about another year and a half before they finally got me approved on a couple of the things. And I'm still to this day waiting for some of the stuff to get evaluated. I got officially out of the Marine Corps in 2010.
Oh, wow.
It has taken 11 years. And I honestly, sometimes I feel like they try to wear you down so that you just give up and go somewhere else. It takes a couple of months to get into some of the routine appointments, to get an intake started, all this kind of stuff. I mean, have things improved? Absolutely. Compared to when I first started. And the medical side is not nearly as bad as what you have on the administrative side. So your doctors, your nurses, your EMTs, they are wonderful, amazing people. And they are doing just a bang up job with the resources that they have. All the bureaucrats, all the politicians, that's the side that bogs everything down. That's what causes the backlogs. That's what causes the wait lists. That's what causes delays in processing for paperwork. There is so much red tape. I mean, it was another big issue when I ran for the U.S. Senate back in 2018 on getting the VA reformed. And part of that, honestly, is we need to enter in a little bit more of a free market with this and start letting veterans go to their local hospital, period. They get an ID card and they're not mandated to drive to a certain hospital or a certain clinic. Look, you got injured in the service. We signed a contract with you that we're going to take care of you. The end.
Yeah.
And that's the way that it should be.
Yeah,
and unfortunately, they don't.
Yeah, I know they did the Choice Act, but that generally does for the examinations rather than, general medical care. And
Yeah.
people just don't understand that there are a lot of VA hospitals, but if you're somebody who lives out in New Mexico or your closest VA hospital may not even be in your state.
Mine's 80 miles away.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, it's not the most convenient thing for people to do. One size fits all generally fits nobody. So
exactly. And I mean, I had to fight to get approval to go to my local hospital and my local clinic in order to get some of these injuries treated. And, the hospital that I would need to go to, if I did end up needing to go to the hospital, is, only about 5-6 miles away from my house. If it's my doctor that I use through private health insurance, it's about a 2-minute drive from my house. But the VA is wanting me to drive just over 80 miles to go out to Salt Lake City. I live almost in Idaho.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's a haul. I know the people in New Mexico, they've, like a 250-mile trek, or, if they can get seen in Lubbock, then they'll go out to Lubbock. But if they hold to the state borders, then you got to go to Albuquerque or Alamogordo or something like that to get seen. And it's not that easy. I mean, that's a day.
It's really not.
That's a day out of your life right there. So, any other things you want to talk about before we wrap up?
Just a shout out to the Libertarian Frontier Project. I'd love to give them a shout out because, first of all, they got Marshall Burt elected in Wyoming. So
yes, sir.
Let's raise the roof for them. And then also they have sponsored a petition to basically get on the ballot medical cannabis in Wyoming. So or is it full legalization, or do you know if it's full or just medical?
Medical, I think there are two. I think there's a medical, and then there's a companion for decriminalization.
Okay,
Uh,
gotcha.
uh,
So technically both.
yeah, yeah, and
But
great work.
Apollo Pizzell, it's his idea. He's been pushing for it, and just want to give a huge shout out to that. It's so great to see resources being poured into local communities, because ultimately the best way to sell liberty is to get with your neighbors. When it's somebody local, when it's somebody that you tend to have a higher trust level for that individual. So when it's neighbors reaching out to neighbors, and it's within the community, and they can see that libertarianism in action, it changes the world.
Yep, absolutely. One of the greatest projects we got going on with the Libertarian Party is the Frontier Project. I encourage everyone to get involved. You get in any way you can. I know every year that they are doing, when they're in election season, they have jobs for people to go out and knock doors and phone bank and all that good stuff. So get involved. Another great Utah in Apollo Pizzell doing that. So,
Oh yeah.
Craig, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I really appreciate you dropping in and talking about Afghanistan. I've been wanting to talk about this because of the collapse of the withdrawal and the collapse of
Yep.
the government. And, this is very timely, and I really appreciate what you're doing. And again, if you want to get out there and get involved, the Afghanistan Advocacy Pack?
Accountability
Pack. So Afghanistan Accountability Pack, go check that out and get involved if you can. And we really appreciate everyone joining us this evening on the Political Deep Dive. We are taking the next week off because I will be sitting in an airport in Denver waiting for a red eye back to the DC area. So, but we'll return in September. We're going to be doing a couple of really cool shows. One is called Candidate Apalooza. Any candidate that is running in 2019 or 2021. What year am I in? 2021 in November.
It's all
I'd love to have you come on. We'll talk about your campaign and how people can get involved. I want to do it in September because that is right before the a lot of states start doing the early voting. So I want people to be aware of your campaigns and getting out there and getting involved where they can. And we're also going to talk the Canadian election. The Prime Minister Justin Trudeau last week announced a snap election. So Canadians will be going to the polls. I'm going to try and get somebody on from the Libertarian Party of Canada, which just had a leadership change in the party. It's no longer Tim Moen. It's now Boudreau is the last name, is the new leader of the Libertarian Party of Canada. So we're hoping to get somebody on from the Libertarian Party of Canada to talk about the election and what they're going to be doing in the election. So stay tuned for those coming up in September. But again, thank you so much for joining us, and we will talk to everyone in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on the Political Deep Dive. We air every Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. You can get regular updates on our show and our guests by following us on social media on Facebook.com/thepoliticaldeepdive, all one word, on Twitter.com/politicaldeep, all one word, on YouTube.com/Papaduke, PAPADUKE, on Twitch.tv, The Political Deep Dive, all one word. And on Mondays, the audio of this episode is uploaded to SoundCloud.com/The Political Deep Dive, all one word. And you can join in on the fun on Instagram.com/The Political Deep Dive, all one word. The best way to support the Liberty Movement is to join the Libertarian Party at lp.org. Give us a like, a share, and a subscribe on whatever platform you're watching from. It helps extend our reach, and we greatly appreciate it. We look forward to seeing you next